Hello, I'm Portia Young. Welcome to the November edition of 1036 here on Milwaukee PBS. In this episode, meet a former Mrs. Wisconsin who's now fighting for the rights of women in Afghanistan. And Dan Small introduces us to a young blacksmith who juggles farming and forging. But first, November is a time to officially pay tribute to all veterans, including 90-year-old Ann Fritsch, a Vietnam War veteran from Milwaukee. We joined the colonel and fellow veterans on a Stars and Stripes honor flight to Washington, D.C. Here's her story.
During the Vietnam War, an estimated 10,000 women served in the United States military. They performed many support duties and also experienced the horrors of war. Ann Fritsch was one of those women. The native Milwaukeean was a member of the Army Medical Specialist Corps. During her 32-year career, she served 2 tours of Vietnam, along with 2 residences at Walter Reed Military Hospital in Washington, D.C.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, it's been
You have a marvelous day today.
Oh, I will. And thank you for being here.
Last September, the 90-year-old retired Army colonel returned to the nation's capital with the Stars and Stripes honor flight.
Morning.
Here comes Ann. Woo!
The volunteer organization took about 150 veterans to D.C. to tour the nation's war monuments, including the Vietnam Memorial. We spoke with her in the days leading up to the trip.
Did you consider yourself a pioneer in any way?
No. No, I didn't. I just had a job and I did the job. You know, I didn't think of really what I was doing other than my job.
Her job as a physical therapist was to rehabilitate and work with amputees and wounded soldiers. She enlisted during the Korean War in 1951. But she didn't go to Korea. She served stateside. When the war ended, she found another use for her training.
At the end of the Korean War, I was at Valley Forge Army Hospital in Pennsylvania. And the war ended and we didn't have casualties, but we had several therapists. And so if you would go to a community that was having a polio epidemic, they let you go and then give you Army credit. So I did get credit for those years because I came back to Milwaukee. We were having a terrible, terrible polio epidemic at the time. It was just dreadful. And so I worked here in Milwaukee.
Before being assigned to Vietnam, she worked at numerous hospitals and bases across the country.
The Army was very good to me. They gave me good assignments and good educational opportunities. I had 5 assignments in San Antonio, which is the home of the Army medic. And so all the training programs are given there, and we had a big hospital, we had a big research unit. We did the basic care of burn patients, and actually that unit revolutionized the care of burn patients around the world. It was, that was an exciting assignment. Difficult, very difficult, but I learned so much.
She did her first tour of Vietnam in the late 1960s at the 8th Field Hospital in Nha Trang.
I took care of a lot of fragmentation wounds, and they would just sew them up and get them moving. They just didn't let anybody sit around in bed, so we were busy all day long. And then amputees. And when the patient had an amputation, if it was in the morning, by afternoon we had them up on their feet. It really made a difference because they couldn't think of themselves as disabled. They saw themselves as having a problem, but not disabled, because there they were up walking on crutches. And then we'd start them out on the training for that an amputee has to have before they can accept an artificial leg.
The staff also served the civilian population.
It was a little girl who the Viet Cong amputated her leg to make an example for her community. And they brought her, Special Forces brought her into our hospital. And then I was I worked with her to get her leg ready to have a prosthesis, and the Vietnamese had a very good civilian prosthetic section, very advanced. And so I took her to Saigon to get a leg. And then this is a picture of her walking with her new leg.
Her experiences in Vietnam helped when she was assigned to Walter Reed. She was in charge of the orthopedic section of the hospital.
The doctor called and he said that he had a patient who he was sure was going to die unless they got him up walking. And so I went to see him. And he had 8 tubes running into his body and 8 bottles around and an arm and a leg in casts. And I thought, how in the world would I ever get this man up?
She enlisted the help of 4 young, muscular corpsmen who worked at the hospital.
Each of them had 2 bottles and an extremity. They brought him down in his bed, and then they stood him up, and he started screaming every obscenity I have ever heard, and some I didn't. They stood him, and I got behind him on my knees, and I just lifted it. And he walked. And he did this for about a week, and finally he just decided we weren't going to let him die, and that was it. It was absolutely amazing. And the day he left, he came into the clinic to say goodbye, and he put his arms around me and whispered in my ear, "Am I your masterpiece?" And I thought, I couldn't believe that this kid realized there's the science of medicine and there's the art of medicine. And he was privileged to have had both.
After the war, she traveled across the country and around the world, lecturing and teaching. She retired in 1983 with the rank of colonel. And on September 16, 2017, she joined other Vietnam veterans on the Honor Flight tour. We asked her what she wanted to see.
I know I want to see the World War II memorial because I haven't. I want to see the Vietnam veterans welcomed home. That's what I want to see.
Hear more from Ann Fritsch and see more from the Honor Flights on our website, MilwaukeePBS.org. Just click 1036. Coming up, why an organic farmer spends much of his time doing this on his farm in Vernon County. She grew up in public housing in Milwaukee, graduated from Marquette Law School, and became the subject of an international documentary called Motley's Law. Kim Motley even went on to win the Mrs. Wisconsin title. Today she spends time avoiding danger while advocating for human rights in Afghanistan. You could say Kim Motley has one tough frame of mind.
My name is Kimberly Motley. I'm an international litigator. I grew up in Milwaukee. I grew up actually on 41st and Flores in the Berryland housing projects. My father is African American, my mother is Korean. My father was in the military and he met my mother in Seoul, Korea. I went to a Catholic school, and so I was in this school as the only Asian or Black kid at the school with my brothers and sisters. But our neighborhood was very urban, which I loved that. I loved jumping from different sort of ethnic spheres within my life. My neighborhood always sort of was a work in progress. It was very gritty, but good. a lot of really good people that lived in that neighborhood, but there were issues like there are in many neighborhoods in Milwaukee, and frankly, I'm really glad that I grew up in the neighborhood that I did grow up in, because I felt like that gave me a very strong foundation of what the world really looks like. Being biracial, I think, also helped me learn to deal with different cultures and appreciate different cultures, different ethnicities, different nationalities, because I was very proud of sort of my flavor as a person. When I went to college, I wanted to be a DJ. Like, that's what I was focused on, is I love music, and I just love, when I was in high school, I did a lot of DJing in Whitefish Bay, like for the lunch program, and I sort of do it as a hobby a little bit now, but I sort of feel like that's what law is for me. Litigation to me is an art form. It's my craft. What I do is I mix laws and I create a playlist of laws for my cases. Legal practice, cultural aspects, religious ideologies within my practice of law, and also try to add in humanity. So I'm a different type of DJ. I'm like a DJ of law as opposed to a DJ of music. After I graduated from Marquette, then I started working at the Racine Public Defender's Office, and I worked there for 2.5 years. And then I transferred to the Milwaukee Public Defender's Office and worked there for about 3 years. I went out to lunch with a colleague of mine who said she had a friend in Afghanistan that was training and mentoring prosecutors in Afghanistan to build up their rule of law program. Found out the salary paid very well. It was over triple what I was earning as a public defender. I decided to take it. I didn't even have a passport, so it was my first time leaving the US, and then I went to Afghanistan from 2008 to 2009 to train Afghan defense attorneys and to help build up and somewhat create their legal aid program within the country. I've been here for 5 years. I've seen a lot of nasty things. Do the Afghan laws not mean anything? Or you just do whatever? You can't just make up laws. I remember being on the bus from the plane going to the terminal, and the bus had like all these bullet holes in it. It just was kind of like, okay, here we go. And I remember that very vividly. Like, we're just kind of like, okay, now we left Dubai, it's a different thing now. Like everyone's sort of getting their armor on. And I remember that feeling, of what have I gotten myself into? In 2009, I was pretty disenfranchised by the program. I had been there for a year. And so it was a combination of me missing court, of me not liking the program or the machine that I was a part of, which I thought was frankly very corrupt in a lot of ways, and me being extremely curious. That made me decide that I'm gonna quit my job and I'm gonna start representing people in Afghanistan. And to be honest, when I first started practicing there, I was only representing English-speaking foreigners. I was doing pretty well with those cases and winning basically, and getting people out of prison. And so then I had Afghans sort of coming to me asking me to represent them. And I was frankly a little bit hesitant at first because I wasn't sure how that was going to be received, especially in representing Afghan women. I represented women who were charged with rape, who had been raped, they were charged with adultery. And I know culturally, unfortunately, it's accepted in some circles in Afghanistan that if you're raped, you should go to prison or be stoned to death. So I was concerned about how people would take me as an American woman representing Afghans on very culturally sensitive issues. Afghanistan has great laws. The problem is that people just don't use the laws. And that's my whole thing about justness. I have this concept of justness, which is sort of using the laws in the way that they're meant to be used to protect. I consider myself a legal archaeologist, where I sort of uncover laws that have not been used and use those laws to the benefit of my client. In my practice, I do things that I know a lot of women don't do. Men will shake my hand. They don't do that to women in Afghanistan. I will look men in the eye and have a conversation with them. Everyone is not hunky-dory with me practicing the way that I do, but sometimes there's threats, sometimes there was a grenade, it didn't go off, sometimes there's issues, but I just choose not to really focus on those things. Who else is going to do it? I mean, why not? I think it's important. I think it's important to the legal profession. I think it's important for my kids, for their future. I want my kids to travel. I want them to see how things work in different countries. Because of Afghanistan, my practice has grown to where I represent clients on every continent except for Antarctica. I think a lot of people don't understand that the law is theirs. Like, to me, the law is a tangible item. And I try to give them this item, the law. I try to give people their power. I see law as a very powerful thing. And so it just is something that I feel like right now I'm supposed to do. Maybe 5 years from now that may change, but what I do is very much part of my personality and who I am.
Robert Shoals grows organic produce on his farm in Vernon County, but he also served as an apprentice under a master blacksmith in the UK. Now, a certain sound echoes from inside a shop he built on his farm. Listen.
A lot of people have the idea that a blacksmith is somebody who's a farrier or making nails or, the historical sense of a blacksmith. We call ourselves artist blacksmiths today because we found a niche in the art world or in the architectural world where we can make custom gates, we can make custom hinges, custom lighting fixtures, and do it in a process that can not be done in any other way. So the fabrication of steel and the forging of steel is quite different. There's techniques in the blacksmithing world that we can only do with the fire and the anvil. And you can't replicate that with welding or cutting or grinding. So it's still got its place. And there are folks that still appreciate this beautiful ironwork. Typically we start fires with paper. You can use any material you want. You can use cardboard, you can use wood, whatever else. And there's different fuels that you can use to start the fire. I like to use coal because it's a very true fuel. It burns super clean and super hot. The temperatures that I work at are roughly between 1800 degrees or 2300 degrees. And I like to work at a yellow heat. That means it's about 2000 degrees and it's very malleable and very soft, so you can forge it. Once we take it out of the forge, we immediately move to the anvil. You want to have your anvil face very clean. You want to have your hammer come down nice and clean. You don't want to send your hammer at an angle. And that will help you out when you go to finish, that you don't have little ding marks or pocks or deep areas in your blade. The metal moves best when there's air between your hammer and the anvil so that it has somewhere to go, and that's the forming aspect.
Whenever you have a bend in the steel, if you have that bend right there, you don't hit it down like this. You counteract the pressure and you smack it like that.
To neck down the blade, there's different tools that we use, and there's a part of the anvil called the hardy hole, and that accepts different tools. So I have a tool that's called a guillotine or a necking tool, and that allows you to step down that area of the blade where you define what is the blade to the handle. After you forge your blade, there's a process called annealing. And annealing is where you soften the steel so that you can work it down, so that then that helps you to be able to drill it, file it, or sandpaper it, okay? Or work it with stones. And you want to have the steel what's called soft so that you can do that kind of work.
So this gets your blade down to a real fine finish. You can take it to a mirror finish if you want.
After you're done forging the blade to the shape that you want and you've got it to where you want it to be, you take your blade into the fire again and you take it to what's called a critical temperature. That critical temperature is where the steel loses magnetism. Okay, it's a dull red color. When you got to that point, you send it into an oil bath. Okay, that's for oil hardening. And that will harden, you hold the blade down into the bath and that hardens it good and sure. You pull it out. It only takes about 2 seconds. Once you've taken the blade and you've forged it down, and then you've done the hardening and tempering process, your blade is ready to now handle. Depending on whether you have a rat tail tang or a full tang, you're going to drill your pinholes into the handle, and you have to choose material that you're going to have. You can use antler, wood, bone, any material you want. And there's also what's called fittings. And you just go slowly, and you just want to get that to be fit nice and clean. So I've got a bit of work to do here. In any knife, you have the blade, and then it goes the blade into the bolster, the handle, and then you can also add on the end of the handle as a pommel. And those are called fittings, and that needs to all be assembled. That can take a glue, or it can take an epoxy, or some people like to dry fit it if they're very good. Oftentimes we'll pin the handle, so we create little pins which we need to drill through the blade material. I really like that process because it's like jewelry making. It's a very small, fine, very intricate assembly, and it gives a lot of creativity to the blade. I like to do all my knives by hand. It takes a lot of work. You can put 2 to 3 days into one knife, but it is truly an expression of who you are and what you want that knife to be. And when you've completed it, you know that you have this tool that is very unique. It's handmade, and it's going to have a purpose, but it's also very beautiful. It's a great feeling. To be able to come out into the shop for a day and work in the hot forge and just put my hands to it and work with my hands, to me that is very fulfilling.
We'd like to know what you think of the stories seen here on 1036. We value your opinion. We'd also like to hear your story ideas, so call us at 414-797-3760. That's 414-797-3760. Leave us your feedback, and also be sure to check us out at MilwaukeePBS.org. We at 1036 have something to celebrate. 1 year on the air here on Milwaukee PBS. We're proud of receiving Best News Program honors from the Milwaukee Press Club, and several of our segments have been nominated recently for Emmy Awards. Here's a quick look back at some of the stories we've brought to you here on 1036.
My son being 1 in 4,000. What an honor.
Here I have this opportunity to serve my country again, at first in the military, doing 6 years with the Air Force, and now again for the rest of my career as the National Parks photographer.
All I could do was get on my knees and put my hand on the marble cross, that marks the grave, and say, "Hi, Dad."
The Flores family, whose 4 children are American citizens, decided to speak to Milwaukee PBS about the challenges they face.
The more important thing for my family is we stay together.
We share the work, and I think our relationship is now stronger than it was 10 years ago.
20 sheep, Liliana and Luna, 14 goats.
Where there's despair, hope. And the sisters that live here still follow in the footsteps of St. Francis of Assisi.
1 in 9 Americans over the age of 65 has Alzheimer's disease.
Ed, I know you're in there. I know you're in there. You have to come out. You have to come out.
Being a barber to me is I definitely feel like I am a person of the neighborhood. I feel like I have more of a moral and ethic responsibility.
Polish people love to dance. Italians like to sing, and Polish people love to dance. Ram-tam-ta-ra-ta, ram-ta-ra-ta-ra-ta.
On behalf of our entire production staff and studio crew, thank you for being such wonderful viewers. We appreciate your support. It is indeed time to give thanks. From all of us here at Milwaukee PBS, have a great Thanksgiving. We're back December 21st. We leave you with a look from above the fall beauty near Holy Hill.